When no brush of the field was yet in the land, and no small plant in the field had yet sprung up, for the Lord had not caused it to rain on the land, and there was no one to work the ground, and a mist was going up from the land, and was watering the whole face of the earth. Then the Lord formed the man from dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils life, and he became a living creature. The Lord planted a garden in Eden, in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground the Lord made to spring up every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life was in the midst of the garden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The Lord said, "It's not good for the man that he should be alone. I'll make a helper fit for him." Now out of the ground the Lord had formed every beast of the field and every bird in the heavens, and brought them to the man to see what would he call them. And when whatever the man called the living creature, that was its name, and gave names to the livestock, the birds, the heavens, the beasts of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper fit for him. So the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon him. And while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed it up with flesh. And the rib that the Lord had taken from the man, out of that he made woman, and brought her to the man. And he said, "This is at last bone of my own bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. And therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one. And the man and his wife were both naked, and they were unashamed." It's the common story from Genesis 2, the common story of creation. Here is God in his garden, and out of the ground God forms all things, including Adam and including Eve. And they live in harmony in the garden with God, with all that bears fruit, with all the animals, with the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. It's an idyllic story. We all know it. We actually read it once a year. We read it on Ash Wednesday. It's a story that summarizes what we've been saying in the last couple of programs of these. God made all things good, and God provides. God provides richly. God provides grandiosely, if you so will. Here in this garden there was harmony between God and people. God was personal. God was present. Well, all of us know the story doesn't just stop there. The story has a second chapter. The dreaded continuation of the story goes like this. Well, the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord had made. The serpent said to the woman, "Did God actually say, 'You shall not eat of any tree in the garden'?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but God said, 'You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You will not surely die. God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.' So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. And their eyes were open, and they know that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together to make themselves loincloths. Reading the third chapter of Genesis is kind of like looking at a car wreck in slow motion. You know everything is going well, you know the road is smooth, you know all is supplied and everything is good. You know that God is present, you know that everything is well. And in spite of this, in spite of all of that, temptation manages to take hold, temptation manages to turn, temptation manages to corrupt. It's not at its worth that these two were tempted and overcome. It's not at their worst, it's at their best. It's almost like saying that even at our best in humanity, we are not really all that well fit and capable to resist the temptations around us. Think about that for a moment. Think about your own life. When was it the easiest to fall into abusive patterns yourself and into self-destructive ones? Was it perhaps when you were doing actually quite good? Maybe this is a story that gets written and rewritten in all to our lives. The story of God providing and people rejecting the love of God for the idea of loving something else, maybe themselves, more than anything else. The real question that all of us have to ask ourselves, obviously, all the time, is very simple. Why do we do this? We have a world in which God has supplied, a world which God was made good, and we still do evil. Why do we do this? Why do we fall into these patterns? Why do we reject the goodness of God Himself? That's a very good question, maybe to ask of ourselves on a rainy Sunday afternoon. Maybe as we come down from the excitement of Mother's Day, which it is today, we can think about it a little bit, saying, why do I do this? Maybe for a while it is good for us to think both of the great things that God has provided for us. Think about God's presence and His keeping us precious in opposition to our response to it, which has been rebellion. When we ask ourselves, where do I do this? When do I do this? And how do I do this? Maybe it is a good thing to figure out who we are and what we're made of, and figure out where and how and when we're most tempted to just ignore God. St. Paul reminds us that nothing separates us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. That's obviously from Romans 8. A week is coming our way. We should live it in the conviction that nothing indeed will separate us from God. But let us spend this week just aware. Where are the temptations in our lives, and how do we keep managing to give in to them? And maybe as we spot them, let us remind ourselves that God is with us and that God forgives. Finally, let us ask God when we meet our temptations. Let us ask God to please be with us, to stay with us as we face them, and to forgive us as we fall.